first item on the agenda is apologies for absence.
No apologies for absence,
I
Chair.
think we're all here. Disclosure of members' interests, other than the ones that are already recorded. And then we'll come to item 3, which is the business of the meeting, which is the call-in decision. I just want to lay out a couple of things before we start, so we'll have some idea of what we're doing. First of all, when we start, Councillor Jackson will lay out the reasons why he asked for these decisions to be called in. Then any of the other people who signed the call-in notice will be given the opportunity to speak. The leader and the cabinet member will then be asked to justify the way the decisions are made. Then the 10 of us will discuss the matter. The only person that asked to speak other than the members on the committee is Councillor Oliver, who will be given his opportunity to speak when he raises his hand or indicates that he wants to. And then the discussion will be had. We will come to a decision. We will either say that, well, I don't know what we're going to say, to be honest with you, but at some point we will come to a conclusion, and that conclusion will be written down by officers and sent back to Cabinet. I think that's probably all I've got to say at the moment. If I think of any other rules and regulations I think we shall follow, I shall just chip them in as I go. So this isn't a very usual thing. I think this is the 15th call-in there's been in 12 years. So we're all just kind of a bit new at this, feeling our way. So everybody is going to be given latitude, including me. So on that, we shall pass to Councillor Jackson, who will explain why he asked for the call-in to be made in the first place.
Right, thank you, Chair. And it is good to see so many councillors here. And I think it's because we're all very concerned about these issues which are key to the healthcare of residents right across the county. And that's our number one consideration for all of us. We do really value our relationship with the Health Trust, and I do take it that that relationship will go on into the future. But it's that level of integration that has taken about 20 years that we're sort of considering. It is sort of formally coming to a close, but we actually have heard that that's not the absolute end of things. We've had a formal partnership with the Northumbria Healthcare Trust for 10 years, which is quite a considerable time, and through that time working relationships have actually been excellent all the way through. The chair talked about the call-in, and it does just sort of bring into mind the actual purpose of scrutiny, and that's key to what we're discussing today. Scrutiny is actually here to examine cabinet decisions formally and the reasoning behind those decisions, and we're here to hold cabinet members and the officers to account for what they write in their reports and what their decisions are. And we're also here to ensure that the council is open and transparent. We're a very public organisation, and those of us on the council actually value that. And the call-in process through scrutiny is effectively a safety valve to ensure that the decisions are the right decisions, and they're made in the best interests of the council, and more importantly, in the best interests of all residents right across the county of Northumberland. Scrutiny itself is non-political. We're all here officially as non-political members of scrutiny. There is no whip or no party interest in scrutiny, and then it's actually not allowed in our constitution. But it's an opportunity for backbench councillors to question and make sure that council decisions are absolutely fully justified. So we have actually a moral duty in my mind to question a decision which may be wrong, or decisions which have been made on the basis of misleading or incomplete information. And that's what we're here to consider today. This matter actually has been to scrutiny, and questions have been asked, and those of us on scrutiny will know that those questions have not been fully responded to so far about the matter under consideration today. And my view is that statements have been made without detailed justification. So what are the main considerations that we've got here today? Well, the main thing for me, is, and for all of us, I think, is seamless care for residents. And at the moment, we've got a situation where there is this single assessment system, and residents actually not pass from one healthcare system to another. And we try and concentrate on care in the home and keep fewer people in hospital, and I think that's a general aim. And we're actually seen across the country as being a leading area for that. And actually, we've been given official vanguard status for that. And to break that up seems to be a really serious thing and needs to be fully justified. I do refer back to a council report of 2020, and it does say that service level integration of health and social care is likely to be particularly beneficial for people with long-term disabling health conditions who need coherent support from a range of services over an extended period. And that, to my mind, sums up what we've excelled at so far in Northumberland. There are also financial issues, and it's not just about saving money at all. It's about value for money, about what we can provide with a set budget. And I think we've been now told that the change is going to effectively have a cost to the council of around about £2.5 million a year, and that's a real issue for the council. We've been told of governance issues, and we need to explore that. We've been told of the transfer of staff, whether it's 600 or 800, we're not quite sure. The figures seem to differ. But whatever, what are the implications of this huge transfer of a large number of staff? And what do those staff actually want? The people on the ground, the people who are actually delivering these excellent services. Well, I'm afraid the ones that I've spoken to are very unhappy about the change. And so we're working on the back of information and what has been provided both to scrutiny and to the leader and to the cabinet on which they've made their decision. I must say that the published reports that we've got and that they've had are scant in detail, and this is the largest budget of the council of over £100 million a year. We've made questions through scrutiny for more information about the operations, about the impact on residents, about the finances, and about the governance. And I must say they haven't been answered in any way. We have had some information through scrutiny, and it was really unfortunate that the chair of the Healthcare Trust was actually officially excluded from the meeting of the Health and Wellbeing.
Councillor Jackson, sorry, very interesting, although all this is. This is a call-in about the decisions made by the Cabinet, which are on page 1 and 2.
Yeah, I'm just about to go into
well,
that, yeah.
Let's just cut to the chase.
Well, I have to give my reasons for doing a call-in the first place, because it is a serious issue, as you alluded to in your introduction.
Talk more quickly then, please?
Yep, I will. Anyway, so on the corporate services scrutiny of last week, the chair of the Health Trust actually was there, and he made an open offer in public to sit down and negotiate further. He said that quite clearly that they didn't want this dissolution of the partnership, and he said quite clearly that it would mean a detriment to services. And yet, also this morning we have had a statement from the Health Trust that I actually believe the leader and the council have had this information for some time. But we've had information about extra costs, information about extra cheapy risks and risks of the pension scheme, and governance concerns that are very serious indeed. In fact, I can say, from quoting from that, regular meetings between the council and the trust being cancelled regularly. The last proper one took place in 2017. Board reporting reduced in frequency and scope over time. Board members being unable to fully understand risk and accountability from these reports, and regular changes to management. So, what have we learnt from scrutiny over the last few weeks? And this is cutting to the chase. Why the call-in? Well, there's been no detailed financial planning for such a major change to council operations that was being reported to us. The risk and financial implications have not been fully reported to the Cabinet. The financial impact of these serious changes are far from clear. Secondly, the governance and accountability issues raised by Northumbria Healthcare Trust have not been identified, never mind addressed. So what confidence can the Cabinet have in any future relationships, partnerships, whatever, with other organisations? And then specifically, there are recommendations about the future of the 0 to 19 public health service.
Sorry, Peter, that's not part of the
It is a recommendation.
process.
It was the final recommendation in the recommendation.
So is this your final lap, is it?
It is, yeah.
Excellent.
So my colleagues who signed the call-in report contend that the Cabinet were not fully aware that there was another offer to manage this service on the table, and this would have meant a continuation with a registered outstanding supplier, as well as the avoidance of having to find an extra £1.2 million a year to fund that particular service. So we asked the Cabinet to reconsider its decision. There has been insufficient information so far. There has been new information put on the table, and I think it's in the best interest of this county and every resident who lives in here to reconsider. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent, Peter. Thank you very much. Before I bring anyone else in, I'm not certain you've identified which part of the recommendation you want the Cabinet to reconsider. So could you, there are items A to J.
Chair, you're well aware that I'm not actually a formal member of your committee, and any resolution it would be expected to come from members of your committee.
Yeah. Sorry, perhaps I didn't make myself clear. I'm not certain which part of the recommendations that went to Cabinet and were agreed by Cabinet you're actually asking to be reconsidered by them, not us.
Well, it's actually, I mean, it is the entirety of the report and the reasoning behind it.
Okay, so that's fine, so that's clear. So what, you're not actually picking on any of the recommendations A to J, you're just saying that the whole decision from moving from one supplier to another and transferring things back in is what you want reconsidered.
Well, I can give you a specific, and I did talk about a specific at the end of my introduction, and that was on recommendation number 9 about the change to the 0 to 19 public health services.
Well, that recommendation there is about the consultation. The decision to transfer the service hasn't actually been taken yet, has it?
Yes,
but anyway, let's not talk.
Particularly unfair to consult with staff to something which might be a non-optimal solution to the issue.
Yeah, okay, so let's not start debating how many angels are dancing on the heads of how many pins, because that's going to get us nowhere. So the other member of the call-in who signed it is Councillor Taylor. I think she's the only person here. Yeah, but you two are on, or Councillor Bourne as well, hiding there. not on this committee. So, does anyone else who signed the call in want to say anything?
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Taylor, Councillor Bourne, Councillor Homer.
Chair, thank you. I signed this because I'm a new county councillor, relatively new to scrutiny, wasn't aware of any of the background of this, and I felt that we needed, well, for me personally, before I was going to make any decisions or make any suggestions, that I needed further information. I have to say, officers have reached out to me, so I have information which I didn't have prior to scrutiny committees, and I'm quite content to leave as is, and I certainly will not be challenging any decisions made by the Cabinet.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair. I'm gratified that officers have reached out to some people that signed the thing. I've not received any reach out or any further information that would give me comfort. I would have loved that, but we are where we are. I think that's a symptom. It's very strange that some people have been approached and provided with information, not others, and that's a symptom of a great malaise that currently exists in the county council. As far as this call-in is concerned, I agree with what Councillor Jackson said. Having sat at the previous session and also in my committee where the Health Trust did come, there was quite clearly a desire from the Health Trust that they put in writing. They do want to work constructively to try and resolve the issues. And I think, you know, we have to give that opportunity a chance. And I think this call-in is the only way we backbenchers can actually put to the Cabinet that actually we do want you to try in good faith. I mean, I was rather disappointed with what was circulated by the Trust earlier today, or last night by Councillor Oliver, who the Trust indicated that they didn't feel that the meeting that took place after my scrutiny committee, which my scrutiny committee recommended, was productive, or indicated any willingness by the council to genuinely engage, and I thought that was very disappointing. So I would urge members of this committee to think. It's your job to make recommendations to Cabinet, to ask them to rethink if you think it's appropriate. Ultimately, the decision belongs to Cabinet, and it's their decision, and once they make it, you know, that's their prerogative. But we as backbenchers and scrutiny do have a duty, we have a role, and we shouldn't be criticised or attacked for trying to ask genuine questions, raise genuine issues, and actually want to see things done properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bourne. Councillor Homer.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a point to note, really, I didn't have any reaching out to me either, so I'm in the same boat as Councillor Bourne. It was 2 points really for me, and I don't think I'm saying anything that I didn't say at the Scrutiny Committee. First of all, that Cabinet were asked to note that the most appropriate viable option for adult social care functions which were delivered by Northumbria under the partnership agreement is for them to be operated directly by the council. I think there's information come to light which for me means that I don't have confidence in that financial information, because it certainly seems to be different from what we were told on the 2nd of August at the Scrutiny Committee to what the Trust is now telling us in terms of the potential costs of this change. And, you know, I'm not aware whether Cabinet had all of that information, but if they didn't, then I think that's wrong to agree point C without all of that financial. So that would be one of my questions, actually, what financial information has come into the Cabinet. And the other point is under H, because we're being asked to note with a statement there about without unnecessary costs. We don't know whether there are unnecessary costs or not, because there's a discrepancy between the financial information that we were given at scrutiny and that's come in from the Health Trust. And they're the two issues that I have. Thank you.
Excellent. Two very excellent and relevant questions. Thanks for that. But all I would say about being reached out to, the Trust have also been very selective on who they've reached out to as well, and sometimes in an inappropriate way, in my way of thinking. But anyway, Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. The first thing that I'm going to say, and I'm going to say it very briefly, and I just have to say it, and it's the same thing that I said at the last meeting. I am in a position where, to be blunt, I don't know what the hell's going on here. And I would have really liked the opportunity, not just to get third hand from some defined questions from the Trust, but I would, before I could even begin to get my head and analyse what's going on, I wanted an opportunity to question the Trust. It's a very odd situation. It's very odd, quite possibly unprecedented, that a group of Conservatives have called in a decision of the Conservative Cabinet. And I'm a little bit concerned. I mean, if you could give an analogy that if you were a marriage counsellor or you were negotiating between two sides who've got a dispute and you want to question them and challenge and play devil's advocate and help. But it seems that this group of people who have called this in seem to be batting for the Trust, and they seem to be sort of wanting to take the Trust side for it. And that is concerning to me, to really think if there's other agendas and being played out here, because it doesn't seem to be sort of a balanced approach. Regarding the Trust, I would give them the opportunity if they give a very good response, but my thoughts at the moment is I would have no confidence in them. And even the fact that they're saying that, oh yes, we'd be prepared to negotiate, for any organisation, for something as important as this, to come to a decision to sever the partnership, you would think you've done all your due diligence, you've tried, you've negotiated, you've done whatever tools in your armoury to try to resolve this. And then if you're suddenly backtracking and saying, oh, well, we might negotiate, I mean, I wouldn't have any confidence in working with them now. There's a complete breakdown of relationship. The spectacle at the meeting, I mean, I don't know why they came to the Economic Scrutiny Committee, but they didn't come here. But, you know, I would give them a fair hearing, and if they come out with a brilliant case. But at the moment, and the fact that they're suddenly saying they're prepared to negotiate worries me as well about the whole processes and their complete lack of scrutiny. And just the final point, which should have been my first point, like you, I mean, I'm looking at these recommendations and they're all no. So I don't know, it wasn't really defined exactly what part we're challenging. And if it's about changing the decision, well, this is the decision of the Trust. So I don't quite know specifically what the key issue is here, as you were trying to press Councillor Jackson on, because I'm reading down that and it's all no. That's my point just now.
Right, so what I would say, I'm going to bring the leader in, having just been reminded that he's here. Councillor Hill, the reason, you know, the Trust haven't been at either of these meetings is because this hasn't actually got anything to do with them, in the sense of this is how the council is going to arrange themselves to deliver the service that they've no longer wanted to give. It's not about the Trust at all. And the call-in is about the decisions that, as you quite rightly say, the note recommendations. It's not about how the partnership broke down or why or how much more money it's going to cost us. It's you've heard why people signed the call-in notice.
I mean, I've just, to make that point, yeah. I've just, if we come to the vote on anything, and I don't generally like to do it, and it sometimes looks like you sit on the fence, but why, if you know, to justify, if I end up abstaining or anything, it's just because, like, I still do not know, you know, what do you think about Harrogate, etc. I'm just like or even this call-in, well, I just don't know what's going on, because we didn't have the opportunity to question the Trust in the first place. That's why I'm shrugging my shoulders here and thinking,
well, as you realise, it should have, all of this debate should have taken place months ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, once you've pulled the trigger, you know, it's a bit too late to be running after the bullet, saying, excuse me. Anyway, Councillor Sanderson, sorry about the delay.
No problem. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be very measured in what I say, because this is obviously a very sensitive subject, and it involves the most important people of all, which are the clients, the patients, the residents that we're looking after, and secondly, the staff that do all the work. What I would say to begin with is that scrutiny does have a valuable role to play in local government. I've chaired scrutiny for a long time myself, and I felt that it was very important to hold the executive account appropriately. I would just draw attention to this letter that's been passed around this morning. I've had a chance to have a quick look at it. It does say that the problem started in 2017 and then other things happened in 2019. I would just remind councillors that I've actually only been leader since October of 2020. So I suppose what I could say...
It only seems longer, is that correct?
Well, it seems longer to you potentially, but I'm enjoying every minute of it. So what I would say is that if there were these issues, I'm surprised they weren't picked up previously, and I don't recall any discussions taking place in those years. What I can tell you about what's happened since I've been leader, which is that I was approached by Alan Richardson, the chair of the trust, in, I think it was January, who said to me, there are some issues that we need to resolve and we're not happy and so on. So I asked that Veronica Jones, who was then our cabinet member responsible, my deputy then, Richard Dodd, to meet with our officers and their officers, along with Alan Richardson, to have a full and frank discussion about A, what was going wrong, and B, most importantly, how can we resolve it? And I said at the end of the meeting, I want to set this date, and I can't remember what it was, I think it was the end of March or early April. I said, by this date, I want to see real progress and all matters sorted out and resolved. Before we'd even gone 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and Veronica may be able to help me with this, and I know Veronica and Richard had a one-to-one meeting with Alan Richardson, as well as the meeting I had with those officers. But before we'd actually even got close to the date I'd set to have a feedback, see how things were going, I was informed, not by him, but by our officers, that the trust wanted to pull out and cease the partnership. I had no formal notification of that at all. Now, once that happens, you've then got a choice. You can try and go back to the negotiating table and try and pick up the pieces. You can act sensibly and have a proper dialogue, or you can, or as well as sometimes, you can say, we'll continue to talk, but we have to act quickly. We have to find an alternative. This is what's going to happen to these really important areas of service. We've got to make sure we get something in place very quickly. So we were set at a certain deadline, and then we said, look, we're not going to be able to do this for the sake of the staff. We want to extend that deadline, and that was extended. Only later, they mentioned the 0 to 19 service and said that actually they'd quite like to carry on doing that. And by then, we'd already had discussions with the Harrogate Trust, fruitful, sensible discussions with them. And this is the trust that works in a number of other similar counties and councils to ourselves. So effectively, it was too late to look at repairing the damage that so many people had tried for so long to repair. And I can tell you that that meeting that I had with staff and Richard and Veronica was not a softly meeting. It was very, very clear that if there are issues about personalities or governance or any other matter, it had to be sorted out, and we had to do that and get on with it and come back to us by this date. So I was therefore obviously very disappointed that they decided to pull out before then. I suppose that brings us up to date. The Trust said at this scrutiny meeting that they wanted us to have a pause in the proceedings and for me to meet up. And I said, okay, I will meet up. And we did meet up. And it would be absolutely incorrect to say that that was a prejudged meeting. It didn't go well. It did go well. It was a very useful, polite meeting. Regrettably, neither the chairman or the deputy chairman nor the chief executive were present. There were 2 board members who I didn't know, and someone else whose name escapes me. But we had a very cordial meeting. I basically said, what has changed so dramatically and so substantially to have this complete change of view? And the answer I got, and it was Claire Riley, the answer I got was because they'd reflected upon it. Now, you cannot expect us to pause negotiations and pause all the plans being put into place because there's been, quote, reflection, quote, upon the situation. That is completely unacceptable. I also said, when we were talking about money, if there are issues around finances, then show us the evidence and we will look at that. And we had been shown evidence from our own offices, and I dare say Jan may wish to say something about that. But at the end of the day, if we have to pay more money, it's not our fault. They were the ones that refused to continue the talks that I'd asked to be set up. And they were the ones that gave notice to move from us this working together. Now, I think what I would finally say is it would be completely wrong to be judgmental about personalities on either side of this. If there is evidence, and I mean proper evidence to show that there was maladministration or inappropriate behaviour, then let us see that. But I have not seen that in writing or verbally. Therefore, I've made it quite clear, Mr. Chairman, over the last 2 weeks that I'm not wanting to change direction. I'm wanting to continue with the process that we've got in place. I have a consultation that is finished with Harrogate Trust. I want to be absolutely sure that our residents, patients, clients are kept within the same level of care, if not potentially better level of care going forward, that our 0 to 19 services is efficient and good as it possibly can be. But most important of all, we must not forget the staff who are embroiled in all of this. And I, for one, will see that this council behaves entirely appropriately, given the circumstance that we've got, and that is absolutely the way we're going to go. Thank you.
You mentioned Jan there. I don't know whether she feels as though it's appropriate to say anything at this point, or...
Yeah, I'm happy to come in at this point and to give my view as the Council Section 151 officer. Neil Bradley, the Service Director responsible for adult social care finance, who is currently jointly funded by the Council and the Trust, has been leading the work on unpicking the financial implications of dissolving the partnership in conjunction with officers from my corporate finance team. As the report that went to Cabinet states at recommendation G, a great deal of work has been done to understand the financial implications. We have identified a number of potential costs to the council, but also a number of potential savings, but that work is not yet complete. So speaking personally, I find it quite disturbing that a letter should suddenly materialise, which I was not copied into, which mentions figures which have not previously been discussed with any of my officers or with me, and I'm simply not in a position to give any assurances about the validity of the figures that have been shared in that latest email. However, what I can say is that I do not believe that that presents a complete view of the financial position. I think what the Trust have done is to cherry pick those areas where there are likely to be additional costs. They have not factored in the areas where there are likely to be savings. And as I've said previously, those numbers have not been discussed with my finance team or with Neil Bradley, and we have no understanding of the assumptions that sits behind those figures. So I want to be perfectly clear that I do not think that those figures are reliable at the present time. I think it might be helpful for the committee if I were to outline the areas where I do foresee additional costs, but I want to preface that by saying that some of those costs the council would have had to bear anyway, regardless of whether the partnership continued in its current form or comes to an end. And three areas in particular that I would point out. First of all, we have been aware for some time that in order to address issues around equal pay, that some regrading of the adult social care social workers would be necessary to bring them into line with what our social workers working in children's are paid. So there is a significant cost associated with that, but we would have had to do that anyway. And I don't think that you can therefore regard that as a financial consequence of the partnership ending. The second area, which is still subject to some uncertainty, is pensions. So we have had confirmation that a direction order will be issued allowing staff transferring back to the council who wish to do so to remain in the NHS pension scheme. As some of you may be aware, the employer's contribution rate for the NHS pension scheme is increasing. Transitional arrangements have been in place for the last 3 years. It's unclear whether those transitional arrangements will continue, but under those transitional arrangements, the 6.3% increase in the employer's contribution rate is being funded centrally by the NHS. It's unclear whether the trust whether those transitional arrangements will continue beyond the current financial year. If they don't, then the trust will have to bear that 6.3% increase. And it's also unclear, even if those transitional arrangements do continue, notwithstanding the fact that a direction's been issued for council staff to remain in the NHS pension scheme, whether the council will benefit from that rebate as an admitted body. So there's considerable uncertainty around the pension position, which we are seeking some further clarity on. But as things stand, it is arguable that we as a council would have faced a very significant increase in pension costs, again, regardless of whether the partnership continues in its current form or not. And if the council does bear those costs, it will bring the contribution rates into line with the council's employer contributions. So that's the second area. The third area is IT licences. I think in the latest correspondence, the Trust has suggested that the council would have to bear an additional £500,000 worth of costs for IT licences if the partnership were dissolved. We've estimated that slightly lower, about 400,000 rather than 500. But again, this is something which has been known about for some time, and those are costs which I'm satisfied the council would have had to bear regardless of whether the partnership continues or not. So those are three areas of potential additional costs. What has not been mentioned in the latest correspondence from the Trust is that there are likely to be some savings associated with the staff who will be employed by the Trust going forward. For example, physiotherapists, where the cost of those is likely to be to the Trust is likely to be higher than the council currently funding. So there'll be a saving coming back the other way. The current estimates are that could be of the order of about £600,000 or £700,000. And there are a whole host of issues which we're still working through with the finance officers at the Trust around capital asset valuations, leases, property related costs. Some of those things likely to be picked up by the CCG. And again, you know, it's not entirely clear exactly where we will end up in overall financial terms. The last area that I want to highlight for the committee is in relation to the Joint Equipment Service. In the latest correspondence, the Trust have suggested that there is a deficit of about £750,000 on that service, which has come as complete news to me and to my officers and to Neil Bradley. This is not an issue that has been flagged up by the commissioners or by the CCG, and we are completely at a loss to explain where that figure has come from. If there were a £750,000 deficit in that service, I would have expected trust officers to have been flagging this up urgently at a much earlier stage. And personally, I find it completely unacceptable that the first that I hear of a potentially significant deficit of that kind is in an email to a member of this council that you know, none of my officers and or myself have been copied into. So I find it surprising, but I'm just not in a position to give any assurance to the committee about the reliability of the figures that have been put forward. What I can say as Section 151 officer is that I think there is every prospect that as we continue to work through these figures, that the financial position that we end up at will be very substantially different from the position that has been presented by the trust. And I would therefore urge the committee to be extremely cautious about making decisions or recommending action to the Cabinet on the basis of figures that have not been validated. And I think I'm going to stop there, Chair, in terms of my comments, but obviously I'm happy to take any questions that the committee may have.
Excellent, thanks for that. Doesn't look as though there are. Oh, Georgina, and then Count Nick Oliver indicated he wanted to speak before.
I just wanted to follow on from what Jan said and to make a general point. I think it's a really bad habit for anyone to get into. And I know actually Councillor Bourne, and a motion I completely agreed with, a year or two back, put a motion about people proffering legal advice and proffering figures and going to third parties to get figures. You know, I mean, obviously if you get something very specifically factual, but I think when councillors go and proffer expert advice, whether it's legal or financial figure from third parties, particularly when they can't be seen as objective, I think we have to treat that. In fact, I think we really have to just cast it aside, to be honest.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. I sort of found myself agreeing with Councillor Hill earlier on, and that doesn't happen very often. This is a situation where we don't know what the hell's going on, frankly, and I think we haven't had information that I think we need, and I don't think the Cabinet have had information that it needs to be able to make a safe decision. When we first heard about this in March, I was in the Cabinet, and I heard, I asked at the time for detailed financial analysis. We also asked all sorts of questions around, what the impact would be on residents and users of the services, and what the impact would be on the staff. And we've just heard the Section 151 officer, Jan, tell us that she still doesn't know the answers to those questions. So the question I would ask is, how does the Cabinet and how does anybody feel that they can make a safe decision when they don't have the information and we still don't have the information upon which to make that decision? I asked questions in the last scrutiny meeting in this room about this, and I literally didn't get an answer. I got a long speech but no answer about can we have the information? And that was recorded, and anybody can check the record. I've asked in Cabinet for that information, and I didn't get the information. So I've given the Council every chance, but I'm still curious to find out what the answer is. And Jan's working through it at the moment, and I'm sure in the fullness of time we will get a very comprehensive and detailed answer. But my point remains is I think we've made the decision before we've had the proper information to make that decision. I think So the reason I went to the Trust and asked those questions is because they're all questions that I've asked of the Council, and they're all questions I haven't had answered. So I felt, well, okay, this is a partnership arrangement. It's a partnership arrangement that's been lauded nationally and internationally as one of the best, if not the best arrangement. It's the direction of travel for government policy, for social and and healthcare policy makers. And we have a relationship that's been, that we've trumpeted for many, many years as being an excellent relationship. I think everybody in the room would agree that it's been in the best interests of our residents. And so I'm just mystified as to why we're making the decision that we're making to end this relationship. Now, whatever happened with the trust, and, I get the feeling from what they've written, and this may or may not be true, I've got no idea, that they felt sort of boxed into a corner because they couldn't get proper information. They had governance concerns that weren't being addressed, and so therefore they made a decision and they took the nuclear option. That may or may not have been the right thing to do. I've got no idea. But I think we're focusing on the wrong thing. We've been focusing throughout this meeting on the history and on what went wrong and who said what in what meeting. What we've got here is a clear statement from the chairman of the Health Trust that he's made verbally in a scrutiny meeting and in writing in answer to my questions, that basically says he thinks there's something worth saving here. So what I would say to all councillors of all parties, this isn't a party political matter, this isn't a cabinet versus scrutiny matter, this is a matter of doing the right thing for the residents and the users of the services in Northumberland. And if this is a good service, as we all probably think it is, then we should be doing everything within our power to try and save that service. So my fundamental question to Glenn is, does he think it's worth saving? And if he does, will he get around the table? Will he actually demand that the chair and the chief exec of the Health Trust come to the table and we try and salvage something from this awful situation? It's quite clear that we don't know what the impact on staff is going to be in terms of pensions. We've just had a very detailed description of the uncertainty there. I'm not sure we understand what the impact is going to be on the residents and the service users, and we certainly don't know what the impact is going to be on the finances of the council. It could be negligible. It could be £2.5 million, but until we know that, we need to pause, we need to take stock, and we need to get into proper discussions with those people and try and save something that's been really, really good. £2.5 million a year. If it does cost anything like that, even if it costs £500,000 or £1 million, it's £500,000 or £1 million that we have to cut from other services. And it's £500,000 or £1 million that's going to impact on other things that the council does. So we have a responsibility as councillors to put aside the politics, put aside all of this stuff, and actually just think about what's best for our council, for the residents of Northumberland, and for the Health Trust. Because if the government do go the way they're going, we're just going to look stupid. Basically, we're heading towards a model that Northumberland have just abandoned. And I think that would be a tragedy of epic proportions. Thank you.
I take it your question to Councillor Sanderson was through me, of course. Councillor Sanderson.
Well, there's only so much I can really say, because I am going to be very measured in what I said. I think the Cabinet member is going to say something as well. But, we talk about a decision. The decision was not ours. The decision was made by the Trust. And I do have to say to you that this prolonged agony that's going on now is doing no one any good. Most of all, our staff, our frontline staff, the people that care for our patients, and actually the people that you see up here on the top table. We have got masses of decisions to make every day, and this is taking an inordinate amount of time. I'm not going to change my mind. I'm going to support what we're doing. Happy to discuss it with Cabinet, but my understanding is that they are quite clear on what we need to do, as I am. So I would just ask that once this meeting concludes, we just put up and stop talking about it. Let's just get this done for the sake of the people that are really important. Do you want to say something?
Yes.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. My focus is the health and well-being of Northumberland residents, and also the wonderful staff that look after them. So that's my main focus here. However, I took over in May, and I was fully briefed by, can I say, two excellent directors of services, Liz Morgan, Public Health, and Kath McAvoy-Carr. What I understand is that the Trust gave us 6 months' notice Now, 6 months' notice is not long. Now, would you expect Northumberland County Council to just dither and not do anything? Oh, with 6 months, well, we can't do anything, because the trust might come back and say we've changed our minds. We had to look elsewhere. And so we did. We went to Harrogate. What I will say is, I was speaking, and I don't want to embarrass either of them because I think they're both wonderful, but I was speaking to a councillor from a big council further south, and they asked me, do you have Liz Morgan as Director of Public Health? And I said, yes, we do. And she said, you're very lucky. So when someone like Liz Morgan tells me that this is the right decision for Northumberland County Council, then I am very happy to go along with it.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah, of course you can.
Just the fact that...
You'll need to put your microphone on, though. Pat.
Sorry, I'm just getting very confused with everything here, but just the fact that the process has had all member scrutiny, then an urgent business item, then Health and Wellbeing Board, and then Cabinet. At the end of the day, the 600 staff are caught up in the fighting of this. And I'm appalled to say that I am sitting here in this room and having to listen to all that's going on. The report has been there, it's been through to everybody. And I think, as Councillor Sanderson said, I think we should go with it. Thank you.
You need to turn your mic off, Carl.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think we know where Councillor Nesbitt stands on that.
Definitely.
So I guess where we are now is the 10 members of the Health and Scrutiny Board committee, get to make a contribution, and then we decide what our recommendations are going to be. And then, you know, we can all go home. So does any member of the committee want to say anything? Georgina, and then Councillor Homer.
Just another short point, it's just following on from what Councillor Patterson said. I mean, one of the issues, of course, which you touched on is now there's been a complete breakdown of relationships. And you talked about the cost of a changeover. I don't really think you can come back from that. I don't know what exactly is going on. My guess, and obviously I'm not going to name any names, but there's certain individuals, we're a large organisation, but there's certain, just maybe a few members of this council and certain members of the trust that have behaved very badly indeed. And if indeed, I think there's been collusion going on between some members of this council and some members of the trust. And there's irritating people in this world. There's the self-righteous and there's people who are malignant. And there's nothing worse than malignant people that, oh, trust me, we've only got nothing political going on here. Nobody believes it at all. It's been an embarrassing spectacle by certain members, pretending to be all pious and just trying to get the truth, and we're not being political.
Would you like the Georgina Hill? Would you like just the...
Sorry, but I mean, my
I
point,
could listen to
because
you all
I say
day,
there's
Georgina,
a lot of
but, you know...
information that I don't know in analysing this, but one thing I'm rapidly coming to the conclusion that it's a no-go to think that we can come back to the trust and then have a situation, instability, 3-6 months, Mr. Richardson, whatever his name, has a drink down with somebody down the golf club and he changes his mind again. I don't know, but I don't think we can come back from this, and I actually will support the Cabinet in this.
Councillor Homer.
Thank you. I wish I had the same confidence myself. And I have to say, this is not about taking sides, you know, from one organisation to another organisation. This is about trying to unpick the truth and get some clarity. And for me personally, to understand whether a safe and sound decision has been made. And for me, there are too many voids. There's a void in the finances. We can't even agree between two organisations, and they're not little organisations. Northumberland County Council and Northumbria Healthcare Trust. We can't even agree whether it's 600 staff transferring or whether it's 800 staff transferring, and they gave us notice in March, and here we are sat halfway through August, and still we don't have that clarity, and that's a huge concern for me. So I have the opposite view. I would like this committee to recommend to Cabinet that they go back and they talk again to Northumbria Healthcare Trust and explore again about what opportunities there might be. Because I agree there are some very upset staff, but they're not upset for those reasons. They're upset because, you know, the ones that have contacted me because they wanted to continue with the relationship as it was. But I really don't, you know, feel that there's been a thorough enough assessment on costs and the impact of breaking up this partnership. So I would actually like to recommend to Cabinet they take a step back and they actually reconvene those negotiations. I don't know who's right and who's wrong. I'm not going to give a damning indictment on the Trust because I just don't know, and I don't think any of us know. But that would be my recommendation, I'm afraid.
Okay, before I bring Councillor Hunter in, is anyone going to second that? Did you? Have we got that? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Hunter.
Yes, as I said at the Health and Wellbeing, I felt that should come to scrutiny a lot quicker than what it did. But we've got to think, we've got residents that needs to be looked after, we've got staff that we have a duty of care to. And again, just got to work with what information we've got. It would be nice if we could have the full picture, all of the information for both sides, so we could make a more informed judgment, as well as Cabinet could make a more informed judgment. But I think we've got to move forward. We don't know that the Trust's not going to come back if we agree to go with them in 6 months or a year's time and say, we're back to the same position. And it's just not fair because there's no certainty for the staff.
Thank you. Councillor at the back, you didn't tell me you wanted to speak, but I shall, as we're being lenient today, I shall let you speak.
Thank you, Chair. This is a request to you, your committee. I was listening to the OSC committee. At no point in time, Mr. Richardson explained what caused him to take that U-turn and what has he done now in order that this U-turn is permanent. He was using words like, we reflected, we regretted, and everything, but he never explained to us what has he done within the management trust that would inspire confidence in us, in the council, so that we can take the U-turn seriously. So you have to bear that in mind. I request the committee members to bear that in mind, that this U-turn itself is not professional, and also they haven't given any clarity as what they have done so that we can trust them. Thank you.
Good point. I've got Councillor Dodd and Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Chair. I have information and privilege that I was in on the act that Councillor Sanderson talked about earlier, that we tried our level best at that meeting. I remember it well, and I'm going to go through my notes and dig up the notes. Because I don't know if any of you are all aware, I tend to make a note of a lot of meetings. Now, on that night in question, we were fortunate that 5 members of the previous council had called in, or whatever it is, signed something to have a special full council. So here's me, I'm not the best on computers, but I had 2 computers going, and Councillor Jones will back this up. We were taking part in the full council, but also taking part in a meeting that was with the Health Trust, following the matter of 24 hours since we were notified of their decision to pull out of the partnership. We were on that meeting, and there was some confidential stuff said, so I'm not going to reveal that. That would be unprofessional. But there are processes here. I smell something wrong, and it's not with us. It may be with others. And at the previous meeting, we said from this committee that we would want to look at this once things had died down, as in the transfer had taken place, and we ask the Trust what their version of events is. Because I do keep a note. And as I say, what was said, and I can't go back to that, but I know exactly what it is because it's written down. Now, that might have to be played out in some court in some places, but we'll see when we get there. But I have got every confidence that we were given Hobson's choice. The Trust wanted to leave us alone. There was no going back. We pleaded, we asked, can we not discuss this? There was no return to say, no, nothing. So we were left out on our own. And we have to do something because we have 700 staff. I don't know the exact number, don't quote me, but it's about there. 2,500 end users of this service. And I am going to try and find out over the next few months if skullduggery has taken place here. And if it has, I'll tell the world. So I think I am backing Glenn Sanderson and the Cabinet that he chairs to get on with this. We only have a matter of days before this contract runs out, which everybody knew about. Our staff have been working tirelessly to try and get the TUPE right, get the conditions right, and here we are, back here on a nice afternoon, sitting here, going over this for the third time. Now, what will come out of this, somewhere along the line, will be something called the truth, and I can't wait, and I'm backing the Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Humphrey, and even though Councillor Dale didn't write to me and say, could I speak, I shall be as gracious to you as I was to other people. But Councillor Humphrey first.
Thank you. Just a quick point to come back to what Councillor Hunter said. We needed the information initially. We couldn't make this decision on just limited information. That information should have been provided. I feel the first meeting we had, the first scrutiny meeting, the information was very sketchy. So that's why I backed the call in. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Dale.
Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I did actually answer last week saying I was coming and could I speak, and they didn't get that, and they didn't get the message yesterday that I wanted to come either. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak, and I haven't got a name even either. Can I just say I've listened to all the...
because everybody knows who you are, Councillor Dale.
Right, I'm Councillor Anne Dale, and the independent member Stocksfield, Riding Mill and Mickley, which is near Hexham. Just to say, I have listened to all the debate because it's so important to our residents, to our staff. But I think what we need to do, instead of going backwards, as David Thompson said the other day at the meeting, and he's a very sound person, and other people have said, we want to look forward to the opportunities we will have in the future. And there are enormous opportunities. It's Councillor Oliver said, we've got to save our service. We're not saving our service. We've got a fabulous service in place already, and we want to build on that service. And it's very clear, as Councillor Sanderson said, about working with Northumbria Care Trust and their decision. And we have to move forward. And we've got such a wonderful opportunity to look forward now to. We've got the levelling up of the North East, the levelling up of our areas in deprivation. We've got a massive job ahead of us, something that actually this council should look forward to. And I know we can deliver, and I've got all confidence in the staff, and they will work with the council as part of the council. And I think that all I can say to the scrutiny committees is that you've heard all the information. Obviously, the information coming from the Health Trust and from our 151 officer don't match up. But, you know, the health service itself, its budget, is terribly difficult to understand. And not only that, but it changes all the time. So it's very difficult how to manage that accordingly with the actual social service budget. However, my view is scrutiny, you've heard everything. Move on and think about the wonderful opportunities. Go out there, be positive for the residents, be positive for the staff, and be positive for those patients who we care for, and just look forward.
Thank you for that. That almost sounds like the end of the meeting, really,
Oh,
doesn't
sorry,
it?
no, I'm just very strong.
So, where we are, I think, no one else is indicating that they want to speak or say anything. So we'll get to the the point where we've got to decide what we want to do. It has been proposed and seconded that we, I'm sure somebody wrote that down, but I don't think there was any more support for that than the two people that proposed and seconded, although I do think there's merit in a lot of what Councillor Homer says, actually, and I think there's been a lot of fluff around this, but the kernel of it has been presented very well by Councillor Homer, and I think there's, you know, there's something in there, but the call-in was about the decisions that the Cabinet made, putting in new arrangements for a service that we didn't want to have to change, but the people that we were partners with decided to pull the plug, and we'll keep coming back to that. And all of us have had one kind of email or another from the Trust saying one thing or another. And they've been very selective on who they've sent some of these emails to, which you just think, well, you know, if you're going to share information about this, if you really, you know, if this is critical to you, then you should be telling everybody, and you should be telling everybody the same thing, not different things. So that's what worries me about all of this. I mean, this is a vastly unknown area for us, and the officers have had 6 months to get a report together that means that the service is going to continue after September. You know, if they'd said, oh, well, let's keep talking to the Trust, and the Trust pulled the trigger, you know, where are you? So now they turn up and they say, oh, well, actually, we didn't mean it. Well, they shouldn't have done it. They should have kept on banging at the door in the first place without saying, right, that's it. With, you know, without the petulance of dissolving the partnership. Why they did it, you know, I guess we'll never know. And at some point, we hope to have them come before us and explain why they did it. And we're going to have somebody from the council telling us how well the new arrangements have worked, and this is how they would like to change them and all the rest of that stuff. So, but at the moment, all I have is what Councillor Homer moved. So unless somebody else wants to, Georgina.
I was just going to say that surely you should ask Councillor Homer if she wants to withdraw it, even on the basis she doesn't think she's got support, or put it to the vote. I would say otherwise.
I think that I've got such a psychic connection with Councillor Homer that I don't think I even really need to ask her. But if you think it's a good idea, Councillor Hill...
You don't want people after meetings saying, oh, well, it wasn't put to the vote. I think we just need to either she withdraws it or we put it to the vote. And then just in terms of something else, I mean, I do agree with the point, analysing what's gone on and more information. I think that is something that we'd all agree with, and any suggestion. But I just think we need to fulfil Councillor Homer's motion.
Yeah. Well, I was getting to that, Councillor Hill. But what I would say is that there does seem to be just a slight misunderstanding about what scrutiny is supposed to do. We don't make decisions. We can only scrutinise stuff that's put in front of us. You know, and if we are given the information that everybody else is given at the time. So, you know, you can't say we can't make a decision on this because we haven't got the information. You know, these are not, whatever we do today does not change. You've heard what the leader said. Whatever we say today isn't going to make any difference to him or the Cabinet. He's still going to vote it through. So we just need to draw this to a close now. I'm going to let Chris say that because I'm not quite certain. Do you want to put your microphone on and say that?
Yeah. The usual procedure would be for the Health Committee to vote on the call-in, and if it passes, then we will make the recommendations of the committee to Cabinet. If it doesn't, then any recommendations that fail to get the votes will go into the minutes of the meeting.
So do we understand that? So what you're saying, Chris, is that we have to decide whether this was a valid call-in or not?
Yeah.
So I guess then, yes, Georgina, that's the expression that I think's on my face also. So, but this seems like Neil, is that, we're happy with that?
I think there's been a motion and it's been seconded, Chair.
Yeah.
There is a question about, sorry, no, I'm not mic'd up. There's a question about which part of the decision is actually being scrutinised, because there's only two elements of the decision, D and H, which are actual decisions and not receiving information. But I think the safest course to follow is to take a vote on the motion. If it falls, then there will need to be a new proposal.
Okay, so excellent when we've got two conflicting pieces of advice, but I shall take the right-hand advice, sorry. So it was being proposed and seconded. Would somebody must have made a note of that? Could we just kind of read that out so we know what we're voting on? Is that something we can do?
Chair, the proposal was just to, sorry, I'll just put it. Right. The proposal was to take a step back and reconvene the negotiations with the trust. I think in terms of the resolutions from Cabinet, it loosely revolves around the first point of noting that the partnership will come to an end. Obviously, there's nothing the council can do about that. It's not our decision, but it could be related to that. So that was the motion.
Okay, so are we clear on that? Yes? So all those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand, bearing in mind it's just the 10 people on the committee that can vote.
2, Chair.
All those against?
That's 8, Chair.
Okay, so from the chair then, I would suggest that we, I think anybody has the right to call anything in, because otherwise although we're elected, it's not democratic at all. Everybody has the right to protest. Everybody has the right to call in whatever they think is wrong. And I genuinely believe that the people that signed the piece of paper genuinely believe that this is the wrong thing to do. But as it wasn't our decision. We've had to make the best of a bad job, as far as I can see. And as far as I can see, the officers have done a good job of making a best job of a bad thing. So, yes, Richard, please.
Procedure.
Save me.
For procedure, do we say that the call-in is valid or invalid?
Right.
Because that surely is the question, and we've just had a vote which would say something different to the call-in. And
I was trying to get to that point, Richard.
Well, like a chairman, I would say, hurry up.
Yes. Thanks. I appreciate the honesty. Yeah. So I think what I'm saying from the chair is I think that the call-in was correct. But, as far as taking a vote on it, I'm not trying to persuade you or anything. But is that what we do? Neil, is it as simple as just, do we agree that the call-in was correct?
Well, Chair, I think that's slightly off the point. It's been accepted, and it's been brought before this committee. Yeah. There's been a motion to refer the matter back to Cabinet, and that's been defeated. Yeah. So there's no motion on the table at present. Right. If members, so we need a motion, we need a proposal, and if members feel that the decision-making process was correct and shouldn't, and there's no problem with it in terms of the principles of Article 13, then there needs to be a proposal that the matter isn't referred back to Cabinet, and that is, if that's passed, then that's the end of the matter. If that is passed, then the decision will come into effect today.
Okay. So proposed by Councillor Dodd, seconded by Councillor Hill. All those in favour of that?
Are you voting, Chair?
No.
No, that's 7, Chair.
Against?
2.
And 1 abstention.
1 abstention.
Me. Yeah.
1 abstention, Chair.
Okay. So, surprised it's only 2:15. So, well done all. Thank you for all being civilised, but I've got a feeling we will be back here before we know it. No more urgent business. And that's the end of the meeting, and I look forward to seeing the members of this committee next week. I think it's the next one. Thank you.